Hello everybody, welcome back to Yummy Gastronomy. I'm Mahyar, and today I'm going to cook you a very delicious Persian style rice that is called a Tah-Chin. Now, a Tah-Chin is similar to what is mostly known in the Western world as a rice pilaf. In India, a similar dish is called a biryani. I'm sure you're interested to know the historical root of the word pilaf and where it came from. The first time this style of rice, which is a rice mixed with other ingredients and a lot of time with meat as well, and it's cooked in a way that the grains are not stuck together and are separate and has a light and fluffy texture. For the first time, it was mentioned by Alexander the Great in 4th century BC. Alexander and his soldiers were so impressed by this dish that they ate in one of the old Persian Empire territories east of the Caspian Sea. They were so impressed by this dish that they learned how to cook it, and they took the recipe back with them to Macedonia, and from there it spread to most parts of the world. What is known in Spain as paella, which is one of my favorite Spanish dishes, also borrowed its name from Polo or Pilaf. And if you're interested to know more about the history of Pilaf or Polo, I'll put a link down below in descriptions for some resources that you can read further on. It is also very interesting to note that the first time in known history, the first written and existing recipe for cooking a pilaf is written by Ibn Sina, the Persian famous scientist of 10th century BC. So without further ado, let me show you how to cook the perfect Tachin. The first thing you need to do is you need to wash and soak your rice. We are going to use 5 cups of rice for this dish today, and usually we use Persian rice for cooking Tachin. Persian rice production is usually consumed locally, and the production is not enough to export. So my friends abroad will have a hard time finding Persian rice. So I've substituted Basmati rice, which you can very easily obtain in most grocery stores, ethnic food stores in North America and Europe. And in texture and length of the grain, it's similar to some of our traditional strains of rice, except it's lacking the flavor and the aroma. While you're washing your rice, don't handle it too much. Change the water 4 or 5 times while you're rinsing it with water, and then cover it with twice as much water as you have rice in your pot, and add 4 tablespoonfuls of salt to it. And don't worry about the salt. This is going to go out of the mixture. We're not going to cook the rice with all that salt in it. Watch the video further to see how we're going to prepare the chicken that we're going to use in our Tachin today, how we add spices and what we add and what to do. And after that, we're going to start cooking. The first thing we need to do before we start sauteing our marinated chicken is to season our stainless frying pan. Seasoning is the method used by professional chefs to make stainless non-stick, and I thought some of you might be interested to learn how to do this. The pan has to get hot enough that when you spill some water in it, it doesn't stick and evaporate. Rather, it starts forming droplets that dance on the surface like you see here. As soon as it reaches the temperature, put half a tablespoon of cooking oil. I'm using sunflower seed oil. Coat the pan evenly and use a napkin. You don't want any extra oil pooling. You just want the thinnest coating of oil in your pan. Once the pan is coated with oil evenly, put it back on medium heat, and it's going to take 30 seconds to 1 minute depending on the weight of your pan and the temperature of your burner to reach a state just before the oil starts smoking. You see it gradually changes color to a golden color, and you don't want to go too hot. The oil going through this process is getting polymerized, and it's going to form a coating on the stainless steel that is going to make it non-stick. Now you see, it's just as it's beginning to smoke, turn the heat off. Now this pan is too hot right now to start cooking in it unless you were searing a thick cut of steak or something like that. So give this 3 or 4 minutes to cool down to a working temperature that is cool enough to start frying or sauteing our chicken in it. In your seasoned pan, put 4 or 5 tablespoons of oil and put the marinated chicken with the garlic and everything in it right in the pan. Spread the pieces evenly. Okay, we're looking at a cooking time of 10 to 15 minutes for the chicken. These are small pieces. They cook relatively fast, but we want them to get slightly crisp and form a nice brown surface. We don't just want to cook them, we want to brown them. One of the most important spices that we use in this Tah-Chin is saffron. This is premium quality saffron grown by one of my friends in northeastern Iran. And what we do is we want to turn this into powder. This is the proper way of using saffron. We've turned this into powder using a small pestle and mortar. It's made out of stone, and this is especially for using it with saffron. And you don't want to pound it, you just want to grind it in circular motion. If you don't have this beautiful implement, what you do instead is put your saffron inside a cup and use the back of a teaspoon to grind it like this with a grinding motion while maintaining pressure, and this will work as well. But this thing is a thing of beauty, and it works really great. Now our saffron is turned into powder. A lot of people, what they do is they put boiling water on saffron powder and close the lid, close the cover, put something on the container and let it steep in heat. What I want to teach you instead is the cold fusion method. We're going to use one ice cube, drop it like this on top of the saffron powder. It's going to take about half an hour for the ice to melt and gradually infuse the flavor and the color of the saffron. This cold infusion method takes a bit longer to render saffron usable, but it intensifies the flavors, and it's a method that I think is a much more efficient and professional way to use saffron. We've been at it for a good 20 minutes, and this is what we're looking for. Some pieces are golden brown, some pieces are deeper brown, and this is enough. We have a variation. Notice I'm using a fork to steer this around because I don't want to break them apart. If you use something bigger, it might apply too much mechanical force, and your chicken pieces will get ugly because they break it apart. The reason we insist on using stainless cookware is because, for reasons that most of you know, we try to avoid non-stick like the plague, and we try to avoid cancer and liver disease and all kind of problems and environmental disasters associated with using and manufacturing non-stick coating for cookware. So that's about it. We're done frying our chicken. We can take them out and set them aside. Now you can use the same frying pan for frying the eggplants. Just scrape any of the spices from the bottom of the pan. You need to get it relatively clean. You don't have to get it spotless. Now, the eggplants that we peeled and cut and salted, the reason we salted them is to get some of the moisture out. You can see droplets of the water oozing out of the eggplants. Use a towel to dry each piece and press them a little bit. This way they absorb less oil while they're frying. You need to slightly brown your eggplants. You don't want to cook them now. They don't have to cook through, because when they go in the Tachin, the steaming process of cooking the rice will cook them. We just want to give them a better taste. And the best way to do that is to cook them in the same pan and the same oil that we use for frying our chicken pieces. While our eggplants finish cooking, we're going to start with our rice. This rice has been soaking for about 3 hours now. Anything over 2 hours is enough. I have about 5 liters of boiling water in this pot. Put all the pre-soaked rice in the water and increase the temperature to bring it to boil quickly. And keep this pot handy, we're going to need it, or a saucepan, a 2-liter saucepan, whatever. We're going to need it later, and I'll show you for what. Okay. Our eggplants are just about done. Lid the rice to bring it to a quicker boil. Okay, it's time to turn off the heat for the eggplants. The rice is beginning to come to a boil, and pay close attention to what I'm telling you now. You don't have to stir them too much. And if you do, you will mash up the grains and break up the grains of rice. And we want to keep them nice and beautiful. Now, this cooking technique is a two-stage technique. Is the standard Persian method for cooking pilaf or polo, which we're using for this Tachin. The first stage is boiling and parboiling the rice for a few minutes, and I'll tell you when it's enough. And the second stage of cooking, which finishes the cooking of the rice, is steaming. Now, you don't want to boil the rice violently and vigorously, because heavy boiling action will also contribute to breaking apart the rice grains. Now, once it comes to a rolling boil, check a couple of the grains and press them between your fingers. This is the way you check for doneness of the boiling stage. If they're still gritty between your fingers, if you feel any hard lumps, you need to cook them more. As soon as they're soft between your two fingers, and it's time to take them off the heat and drain the water. Start with 3 spoonfuls of cooking oil, 1 cup of water. If you're not using a non-stick pot and using a stainless pot like I have here, I've pre-seasoned this pot because the bottom part of our Tah-Chin, which is called the tadig, which is the prized part, will not stick, and we want to be able to take it out in one piece. Now start layering our ingredients in here. Start with a couple of inches or about this much of rice in the bottom. Put a layer of eggplants in the bottom. These are still hot. Okay. Cover it with a bit of rice. Now, our next ingredient, which is almost as important as saffron for cooking this dish, is Persian cumin. I'm using whole seeds, not the powder. Try not to use the powder and find good quality Persian cumin, which is also known as caraway and also known as meridian fennel. Immediately after that, we put a layer of our chicken. You see the whole garlics that we smashed and fried are still whole, and these are going to be wonderful in this Tachin. Okay. Now we have a full layer of chicken. More Persian cumin, and don't skimp on this. You see, I'm using possibly 2 or 3 spoonfuls, and I have completely covered, almost covered this layer with cumin. Follow with more rice. And this is the last layer. It's a thinner layer. course, more cumin. The remaining eggplants, and the rest of the rice. Something very important that you have to pay attention to is we want a conical shape. We don't want the rice to be pressed and flat. You see, we want it to be in a pyramid shape, like this. We'll clean it up a little bit. And now, our rendered saffron is ready. I've added about a tablespoon of water to dilute it because it was too concentrated. And this is just about right. Now you see what I'm doing is I'm distributing it evenly on top of the rice. Don't forget the side skirts. And keep about a third of your saffron. I'm going to tell you why later. Cover the pot. Put it on medium heat. We want all the water that we put in the bottom of the pot to evaporate and steam to begin to rise and completely engulf the contents of your pot. In the small pot, put 1 cup of water, a couple of tablespoons of cooking oil. Now, if you want a good tahdig, this can't be a diet dish. It has to have proper amount of oil in the bottom to give you a nice crispy fried tahdig. And the last thing that's gonna go in there is 2 tablespoons of butter, which is absolutely essential for flavor and greatly enhances the taste of the rice. Now bring this to a boil. Now, while we're waiting for this pot to reach proper temperature, to finish all the liquid in the bottom, I have to explain to you, in order for the rice and for the Tachin actually to cook properly, you have to trap the steam inside this pot. Normally what you would have to do is to cover the lid with a clean towel to form a gasket around this and put it on the pot. The towel is going to fill any gaps between the lid and the pot and form a seal to keep the steam in. I'm not using that because I'm using a pot which has a glass lid and a perfectly formed metal rim, and the two mate perfectly, and almost no steam is going to escape. But if you're using a normal lid and a normal pot, make sure to use a clean towel, the way I told you, to form a seal to trap the steam. Now, once your mixture here comes to a boil and the butter is completely melted, you can turn it off. The reason we are adding water in 2 stages to this pot is because we don't want to drench the bottom of it in water and turn the last couple of inches of the rice in there into mush. The rice in the bottom is already under the weight, is being pressed by all the ingredients on top of it. And if it's sitting in a pool of water, then disastrous results will happen. So the amount of water we started with when this pot was empty was enough to get everything heated and start forming a proper amount of steam in here. Once that liquid is completely evaporated, wet your finger with water, touch the bottom of the pot. If it sizzles, that means it has reached a temperature of over 100 degrees, which means the water in the bottom has completely evaporated. And now is the time to pour this evenly on top of our beautiful Tah-Chin and immediately cover the pot. Turn the heat down to minimum. Don't open the lid and don't touch this for an hour. After an hour, we check the rice for doneness. If you want a good tahdig, it will take at least an hour and a half to form a nice thick tahdig. And the longer you keep it on heat, the thicker your tahdig is going to become. That depends on your taste and how you want your tahdig. Let me stress the fact again, don't fiddle with this, just let it sit on low temperature. Don't take off the lid, don't let the steam escape, and let the magic happen inside the pot. I'll see you in an hour. Tah-Chin, last take. Last takes are always the best part of recording a video because we're gonna have dinner right after that. Now, our Tah-Chin is ready. It's been 1 hour and 15 minutes. We should have a half decent tahdig by now. If you want a thicker tahdig, you should wait a little longer. Now, the last technique, which is very important if you're a tahdig lover, which you are going to become one if you're not already, is to take the pot and give it a good dunking in cold water. Stick the bottom in cold water in the sink. That way your tahdig is going to release in one piece, which I'm going to go do right now. This is beautiful. If Tachin was good enough for Alexander the Great to march for and take the recipe halfway across the world, and if it was good enough for Ibn Sina to, oh my God, to write the recipe in one of his great books, then have no doubts, this is something you must try. Now, we slowly take the layers out. I'm going to take some of the plain rice. That extra bit of saffron I told you to save is for this. This is overdoing it, but you can never get enough saffron. And look at the beauty of this. The color is nicer than gold. Do this gently. Now, I forgot to tell you in the beginning, this is enough food to feed at least 6 people, and more likely 8 people. Okay. This is the decoration, or as you might say, the icing on the cake. Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. Go make yourself a great piece of historical gastronomy right in your own kitchen and enjoy it with your friends and families. And please don't forget, if you like my cooking style and if you enjoyed this video, please support us by subscribing Yummy Gastronomy so you can be notified of future videos. Thank you very much and bon appetit.